As a lifelong Star Trek fan, this has been a very interesting television season for me as we got a new Star Trek series called Star Trek Discovery, as well as a new Star Trek comedy, homage, satire called The Orville from Seth MacFarlane. Now for me, I've been a lifelong Trek fan, so I was very excited from the beginning when I heard about Star Trek Discovery. On the flip side, I've never been a Seth MacFarlane fan. I've seen one episode of The Family Guy, and I've seen Ted 1. I haven't seen Ted 2. I haven't seen 1,000 Ways to Die in the West. And so the idea of him doing a Star Trek homage satire didn't really appeal to me all that much. But here we are 6 episodes in, and thus far I've enjoyed The Orville quite a bit more than Star Trek Discovery, which is very interesting to me. And as I start trying to think through why is it that I enjoy this one more and how can I evaluate them kind of more objectively and think clearly about them, I kind of feel like The Orville is kind of like a cover band of your favorite band, except with a weird comedic twist. It's like if you love Taylor Swift, and this is a Taylor Swift cover band called Taylor Fish, and you show up and they're singing Taylor Swift songs really well, but they're like dressed like fish. That would be weird, and that might be alienating for you, or you might like the weird charm of them being dressed like fish, but they're just doing covers of your favorite artist with this weird comedic bent to it. That's what The Orville is like for me, in that it's got comedy and it doesn't necessarily always fire well, but it's hitting the right notes and it's giving me what I want in a Star Trek sense. Now with Star Trek Discovery, it feels a little bit like your favorite band grew up, maybe got a new singer and got really serious. Back in the day, they were a ton of fun and you loved just kind of the fun mood it puts you in. Maybe you played at a party and they got older and they got more serious, more mature. They're tackling deeper themes perhaps, but it's not the fun thing you grew up loving. And so you kind of look at those two things, and that's what these two shows are like. One is like the cover band with a weird comedic bent, and the other one is like your favorite band that grew up and changed a little bit. That's my take on it. So I'm going to try and objectively compare these two. All this saying, as I said from the beginning, I enjoy The Orville thus far more just as a simple viewing experience. I can just enjoy it for what it is. Whereas with Star Trek Discovery, because of some of the changes in canon, because of some of the other stuff, it's harder for me to get into it thus far. So as we go through this, I'm going to look at the characters, kind of the story in the episodes, the general creativity of the show, kind of miscellaneous, the different things that make each of them unique, and then just the tone and emotion that the show brings out of me. And real quick, before I get started, be sure to put your thoughts down below in the comments section. Which one do you like and why, especially in regards to these 5 points, my scoring system? Tell me which ones you think win on each of those. Also, give me your kind of context on things. Are you a Star Trek fan and are you a Seth MacFarlane fan? It's always used to have that context of what you kind of brought into these shows when you started watching them. With that said, let's start off with the characters. And when I think about the characters on The Orville, I tend to think they're pretty forgettable. So you got Ed Mercer is the Seth MacFarlane character, and he's kind of a captain-y type character that cracks jokes, that doesn't have a distinctive personality to him. And then you've got his best friend, the helmsman, and the best thing you know about him is that I think he draws penises. I think that's what makes him distinctive. And you kind of go through the crew and it's like, here's a girl and she's stronger than men. That's her joke and that's her character. And so thus far into the show, none of the characters, it feels like you could interchange any of these characters with someone else or even a different actor and they'd still kind of stand the same to me. Now here's the thing that makes it interesting though. While none of the characters themselves have popped out to me as like, this is my favorite character, as an ensemble, they're fun to be around. You enjoy kind of the energy that they bring in their jokingness, and even if not all the jokes land, but there's a fun to them being around them. Now, contrast that with Star Trek Discovery. The ensemble of them is pretty unpleasant because they don't get along very well yet. The 6th episode, they started to get along a little bit, but in the first 5 episodes, just constant tension, yelling at each other, bickering, just lack of trust, backstories, all sorts of things that kind of pulled them apart. And so as an ensemble, they're pretty unpleasant and just, they intentionally don't have chemistry with each other. Whereas with The Orville, they have chemistry. But on Star Trek Discovery, the characters are a lot more more interesting. They have depth to them in different dimensions. They're not likable for the most part, and even the ones that are likable aren't good people, so you like them despite their kind of character choices and things like that. But there's kind of multiple angles to them. They pop a little bit more, as opposed to with Orville, it feels a little bit like an ensemble that works. This feels like individual characters that are interesting that you don't really like them. So if I were to pick which show gets the thumbs up when it comes to characters, oddly, I think I'm going to give it to Star Trek Discovery, because they've got more depth, because characters like Lorca, I actually kind of like them. Some of the other people, they've given them some moments that you actually care about them, whereas some of the character stuff when it comes to the Orville is a divorced couple that's one of my least favorite aspects of the show, and the distinctive aspects of most characters is really just kind of their joke. Hey, this guy's kind of like a Klingon and he can eat stuff, but he doesn't have a personality. That's the setup for his joke, not really a character. And so that's why I think I'm going to give it to Star Trek Discovery thus far. Moving from there, let's move to the story and the specific episodes. And so if you look at the Orville, the general setup for it is very Star Trek-y, where we've got a science vessel sent out for discovery. I don't know if it's actually a science vessel, but it's a ship sent out to discover things, be peaceful, build relationships, very Star Trek-y, in particular Next Generation type premise with very Star Trek The Next Generation type plots. And I don't in any way view that as a bad thing. That's a good thing, and it's been 30 years, so having another show doing what that show did 30 years ago, and even if you said, it's Star Trek Discovery or Enterprise did things like that, even that was over 10 years ago. So I think it's perfectly fine to tell those types of stories, and it's a basic premise to set us up for an episodic story. And thus far, the 5 or 6 episodes they've given us, each one of them has had a unique story, a different type of story that's handled ideas and kind of tackled an idea of like zoos and animals in captivity, and why do we think that we can do that? Tackling ideas of faith, religion, actually taking on transgenderism. Like they're actually tackling things through story, which is the right way to tackle ideas, a very Star Trek-y type way to handle things, in which case I'm really digging the way they're handling their storytelling, the way they're not in the ends feeling they have to give a happy ending. They're giving a lot of bittersweet endings. They're giving a lot of endings where you're like, ooh, wow, they actually went there. That was pretty bold what they did. So in a lot of regards, I'm very happy with the storytelling, the types of stories, with what they're doing with the Orville. Now, I will say, and we'll get into this in our next point, they're not inventing anything new with the way they're telling stories, but they're taking a classic method of Trek-like storytelling in doing that. Now, Star Trek Discovery, on the other hand, it's serialized storytelling, very complex storytelling that in the style of most serialized shows these days, we don't really know where the show's going. We don't know exactly where it's headed, and we have a general sort of idea of things. But going into the first episode, we're kind of clueless. And then we watch those first 2 episodes, the 2 episodes together are really the pilot. And they're actually more of a prequel to the show. And they talk about the Shinzu, a totally different ship with a different captain out on space missions. And it's the prequel setting up a war. And then the show's about during the war and a mutineer being recruited for a new ship. And so we don't really know what this show's about. So it's a little bit tricky to compare them once again because they have different strengths and different weaknesses. One is explicitly serialized, one is very clearly episodic, one we know exactly what we're getting, and the other one we don't really know where it's going. With what we've seen thus far, I definitely have to give story and episodes to the Orville. In just some of that, perhaps by the end of this season of Discovery, they'll blow my mind, they'll bring it together, and it'll be big plot twist, it's the mirror universe, it's Section 31, and they'll have some reveal, whatever it is that kind of ties it together and go, oh man, I gotta rewatch the whole season right now. They totally pulled it off. You guys did it. But as of right now, I feel like this show has a bit of an identity crisis, and it has from the beginning. Like, if you read the official synopsis of the show, so they announced today that they're renewed for a second season. So in a lot of those articles, they posted the actual synopsis from the show, and in it says, hey, we've got a new crew with a new captain, and they're on a mission to discover new life forms and new civilizations on new planets with that same ideology of Star Trek and a mission of hope for the future. And that's not really what this show is. And so their synopsis doesn't match the show that they delivered thus far. Maybe that's where the show's headed, and this whole first season's a prequel, but thus far, it's a show that's kind of unclear. So they're a science vessel that's in a war. It's a war setting, but we're not seeing the front lines of the war. We're working on an intergalactic spore travel devices technology to do war, not to travel through the universe. And so thus far, I definitely got to give story to the Orville. It's much clearer focused, and right out of the gate, I just like, these are clicking for me. These are working. I like what you're doing with this. Whereas with Star Trek Discovery, I'm having to warm up to, I'm having to like fight to kind of enjoy this and kind of turn my brain off as they told me that this is the prime universe and the canon does not line up. Next one up, we've got creativity. And on creativity, I'm just talking about, does it feel inspired in what they're doing? Are they bringing something interesting to the table with where they're headed with things, their new kind of twist and spin on things? So if you take the Orville, it's Star Trek The Next Generation with sitcom dialogue, with dick jokes. That's what the Orville is. I can't say there's a lot of creativity in that. They're taking a tried and true show that I absolutely love, that I'm perfectly fine having a cover band of, and giving me that. But they're not doing anything new with it yet. So creativity-wise, I can't give them too much credit. On the flip side, you got Star Trek Discovery, and with Star Trek Discovery, now it's serialized storytelling, it's a war setting, it's a mutineer, the captain's like maybe a crazy psychopath, the Federation is torturing creatures. All of this is new and different, but I wouldn't call it creative. Like, I don't think that they're actually giving us something new that we haven't seen in sci-fi before. What the show feels like a lot to me, it's kind of like Game of Thrones light in space. It's kind of like Star Trek, it's kind of like Battlestar Galactica with Star Trek Easter eggs thrown into it. It feels like a lot of sci-fi we've gotten over the last 10 years, in which case, whether you like it or you don't like it, I just don't think it's like, wow, look what you guys did. It's amazing that you guys invented this new thing. It just feels kind of to me like it's turned Star Trek into generic sci-fi, where they took the uniqueness of it, kind of the worldview of it, and took that out and put kind of this darker, more cynical storytelling and worldview and ideas and characters that we see in most dramas, most sci-fi of the last 10 years. So when it comes to creativity, I don't think I really give either one a point on this one. It just feels like both of them are doing things that have been done before. And so some people really love the fact that Discovery is kind of this darker Game of Thrones-y complex characters, but we've seen other shows do that. And likewise, some people really love the Orville because it is like Next Generation, but we've seen that before. So I'm not going to give either one credit on the creativity side, unfortunately. All right, on Miscellaneous. So we'll start off on the Orville, and the big thing it brings to the table that's its unique spin is the comedy. And I said from the beginning, the comedy doesn't work on the show. It's not hitting yet. The last two episodes 5 and 6, it either bothered me less or actually got some legitimate laughs. This 6th episode, my wife, I think, had 4 or 5 out loud laughs at things. But it's a 40 minute long comedy show, and so 4 or 5 laughs, that's like 1 per commercial break. That's not a good number right there. So when it comes to that, kind of what they're bringing to that thing that they really are doing well, they're not doing it well. The thing they're bringing to the table is the weakest thing about this show. And that's, like I said, it's Star Trek Next Generation, except with comedy that doesn't work. In which case, definitely not giving it a point in this regard. It doesn't, on its uniqueness, it doesn't get it. So what does Star Trek Discovery bring to the table, its uniqueness, kind of the interesting things. I think the one that you give it credit for is just the production, just incredible production, the amount of money spent on it to make it look amazing, cinematic with the visuals of the ships and things. And you just got to give it credit. It does look great. They did spend a ton of money on it. And on that level, it does work. Now, I would ding it a little bit because some of the designs, like the Klingons and stuff, like I don't know what they were thinking. The saucer section spinning on it, I don't know what they were thinking. These are some weird ideas to go with. But if we gotta go with what are some of the unique things that they have, the production design versus the comedy side of things, and there's not a fair comparison. I'm just trying to have some junk drawer category to the different things they bring to the table. I think I got to give the junk drawer to Star Trek Discovery in just some of the casting in it as well. It's just got a few of those junk drawer type things that make me, oh, Jason Isaac, that's really cool. Oh, Michelle Yeoh, that's awesome. That make me lift that one up a little bit more. Finally, we go into just the overall tone and enjoyment, the emotion that brings out of me. And this for me is the one where I'm pretty sure this is why the Orville just dominates for me. In that it has that sense of hope and optimism and team problem solving that is one of the things I think I love about Trek, and that one of the things that makes Trek Trek. And different versions of it have different amounts of conflict amongst the crew and different things they've gone through in darker times. And so in many debates I've had with people like, well, there was this violent thing that happened, and there was this war that happened on Deep Space Nine, and this mutiny happened in this movie, and then in Insurrection there was mutiny going on. And the difference is that the crew had this optimistic, we work together for a better version of things. Last night I watched the episode Mirror Mirror, since there's a lot of mirror mirror discussion when it comes to Star Trek Discovery. And in the opening scene of it, there's a Federation is there trying to get some dilithium crystals. The people are telling them, no, you can't have the dilithium crystals. And the guy's like, you could just defeat us. You could kill us and take our dilithium. Well, how do I know you won't do that? And Kirk's like, as much as we want your dilithium and we want to work with you, we will never use our force to take your dilithium. That's the worldview of Star Trek. And that's what you see in the Orville of the 6th episode of it, where Ed Mercer won't let children die. He actively putting in danger a colony of 100,000 people because he won't actively make a choice to kill children and make that happen. This sort of optimism, progress, we've progressed beyond certain things. That heart, I would call, like what I've been calling it in my reviews, the heart of Star Trek. I see that in the Orville. Star Trek Discovery, however, I don't see it. Everything about this show just feels so much darker and more cynical than what I go to Star Trek for. To somewhat I mentioned before in creativity of just feeling like it's reminiscent of other sci-fi from the last 10 years that has the dystopia type vibe to it. That's kind of what Star Trek Discovery has kind of made things feel like. So you've got, Michael, obviously her parents were killed when she was growing up, so she had to be raised as an orphan on an alien planet where she was alienated by the people and rejected. And then as high up as she worked up, because of a ridiculous scenario she found herself in, she's kind of responsible for her captain dying and being a mutineer. And now everyone hates her. The captain of the ship blew up his own previous crew to stop them from being tortured. The new head of the security, Ash, was a POW for 9 months where he was tortured. And then he gets out and we learn that his parents were killed by a rogue comet. The Federation has to torture animals for space travel. We're in the middle of a war. It's just, all of it is so heavy and negative and makes the universe sound dangerous and scary and not a place that you want to go out to and go out on adventures. It makes you afraid. Kind of like Saru, the number 2 of the or number 1 on the ship, that's afraid of everything, and his species is designed to be afraid of everything because there's a lot of scary things to be afraid of. That's the emotion that they've injected into their show: conflict, fear, damaged, broken people, betrayal, gossip, backbiting. And when you watch the show, you feel kind of the weight of that. And that's not the sense of adventure, fun, teamwork, problem solving that I turn to Star Trek for. And that's, I think, at the core of why some of us just watch it and get a really bad taste in our mouth. And I'm not sure if I've mentioned this in one of my videos before talking about this, but the synopsis of the show, I mentioned this earlier in this video, talked about how this show is going to be about going out on new missions to new planets, discover new creatures, and in the ideology, or following the ideology and the ideas of the original series with this hope of the future. That's what the synopsis for the show that they wrote and released says about it. And so if you go into the show expecting that, based off previous Star Trek, based off their synopsis, and that's what you're expecting. It's a little bit like if you tell me you're going to give me a glass of Dr. Pepper. Nice cold glass of Dr. Pepper. I grab the cup, go to drink it, and it's not Dr. Pepper. It's actually unsweetened tea. And I throw unsweetened tea into my mouth. It doesn't matter if I like unsweetened tea. I don't like unsweetened tea. If I throw unsweetened tea into my mouth thinking in my mind is ready for nice, sweet, crisp, carbonated Dr. Pepper and it's unsweetened tea, I'm just going to spit it out of my mouth. I'm going to immediately be like, I don't like this. This isn't good. Immediately. Even if I like unsweetened tea, which I don't. Key point here. Because it's not what I expected. And that's what this show, I think, feels like for a lot of Trek fans. And some people are coming around a little bit to it because they like unsweetened tea. Some people like me are like, I'm not so sure I like unsweetened tea. And that's where the Orville gets this point for me. And for me, it's really the most important point for me is because it's the one of, do I enjoy the show? Is it giving me what I want out of sci-fi? What I expect from Trek? I expect this one, yeah. I expect this one to be Trek. And I'm getting it from this one. That's a problem. Now, it's only a cover band version of what I want. It's a very hollow version of what I want, but it is the one that wins for me. It is the one that's more enjoyable, that week to week I'm actually excited for. And with Star Trek Discovery, I'm looking forward to it in the sense of it's kind of this a movement of discussion with you guys that I'm having. But as the episodes in and of themselves, they're not like, wow, that was actually really good. It's not surprising me in how good it is. And also, to be fair in all of this, my level of expectations for Star Trek are up here because I love Star Trek. My level of expectations for Seth MacFarlane things are down here. So when I look at the Orville and it's right here, I'm looking up from my expectations like, wow, this is very surprising. It's a big surprise for me. When I look at Star Trek and it's not here, it's down here, then I'm underwhelmed. I'm like, my first emotion is I'm disappointed. That's what disappointment is. A negative gap between expectations, where surprise is a positive gap between expectations. And when these two shows in certain senses are probably, if I weigh them, kind of in the same ballpark actually for me, if I try and get as objective as possible. One I just look at with disappointment thus far. The whole season plays out. It could convince me and change my mind. Maybe some big twists and reveals. Maybe it'll get better. Whereas with the Orville, right out of the gate, I had low expectations and it surprised me. That's my take on it. How about you guys? Let me know down in the comment section what you thought about these different shows. If you rank them on the different categories, which one gets the thumbs up, the thumbs down, which one's the victor? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And I know you guys can give me a lively discussion on it because you guys have been giving me lively discussions on all of this. With that said, if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, but the key thing is I don't want to just talk about Star Trek and the Orville. I want to talk about Star Trek and the Orville and compare and contrast them and battle them with you in the comment section. So join me down below. Let's have a lively, respectful discussion. And as always, thank you so much for watching.